Let's learn something today. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the famous Job. It is not pronounced Job, although it is spelled that way. It's pronounced Job. So, everything that Job went through, all the unveiled suffering that he had to go through, makes us ask the age-old question: why does bad things happen to good people? Now, the answer that God gave Job may or may not satisfy you, because he doesn't really answer it. What he does kind of answer, though, through the reading, if you'll dive into it, is that sometimes God puts us through suffering for good reason. He just may not reveal that reason. That can leave a lot of people with a lot of questions and a lot of frustrations. But at the end of the day, you have to know that God has your best interest in mind and that He is going to do everything to glorify Himself. And so we have to understand that. So Job did not reject God. He did, however, challenge and accuse God. Now, Job had a lot of, if you'll read the story, Job had a lot of friends that were not so encouraging. But what God did to Job's friends and Job himself is that He kind of thundered His own rationale. He didn't exactly answer why, but He did give His own perspective on the situation. He instead overwhelmed Job and his friends with the truth of His majesty and His sovereignty. He didn't answer why. He didn't give Job a reason why He was doing it. He just kind of showed His glory and His majesty. Through all the stuff that Job went through, Job walked away with a deeper understanding of God's power and His splendor. And it also shows at the end of Job when he says, "I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I retract, and I repent in dust and ashes." So in the end, Job does repent for all the blaming and the challenging and the accusing of God. But at the end, he understood and he trusted God that that was his best interest and that he needed to put his faith in God. On today's Animal Spotlight, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite fish, the largemouth bass. It is a very popular game fish around here, and they're actually really good to eat if you know how to clean them correctly. But nonetheless, let's see what we're going to learn about the largemouth bass today. So, at the time of this book was published in 2019, so some of these records may have changed, but in 2019, the world record was 38 inches and 22 pounds. The Florida record was 17.2. So 17 pounds, 2 ounces. That's pretty big for a bass, especially if you go fishing with me. They're very common here in Florida. This is probably America's most popular freshwater game fish, pursued by anglers throughout the country. Found in virtually any large body of water in the state, also in any smaller streams and small ponds. Also, it's called the black bass. Florida's population attain a larger size than most. Like I was saying, they're very big here in Florida. Just about every fisherman I know goes after these things. They're really fun to catch, but that's a little bit about largemouth bass. All right, for our financial portion today, we're going to be talking about compound interest. Now, this is basically the interest on the money that you have deposited or borrowed. When you deposit it, let's just say in your bank or in your Roth or in your IRA or whatever you may do, or if you lend money to a friend, you say, hey, you owe me 5% per year on this money until you pay it back. That is making you money because you are getting the interest. So that if you were getting 5%, you're getting a good chunk of change every year. Now, if you get a loan or you borrow money, meaning that you got money from someone else, you now are having to owe them interest. That can be a different story because now you are paying more than what you initially got. Let's say you took a loan out from the bank, $50,000. Let's say it was a 5% interest. Let's say you had 20 years down the road. You now have to pay the $50,000 to the bank back that you borrowed initially and 5% on that $50K for 20 years. It's not also only on the 5% of the $50K, it's compounded. So it's going to be, in 10 years, it's going to be 5% of, $150K or whatever it may be. So that is vitally important that you pay off all your debts, your student loans, your house loans, your bank loans, car loans, everything as soon as possible because you're going to end up paying more long term the longer you do not pay your debts off. For our history spotlight today, we're going to be talking about the second Industrial Revolution. From the late 1800s until about World War I, a second industrial revolution followed. So in 1855, the British made steel production less difficult and less expensive. This made railroad construction easier and skyscrapers possible. A couple of the inventions that came along during this time, we had the telegraph, we had the typewriter, we had the telephone, we had the light bulb, we had first flight with the Wright brothers. We also had the car, the Model T by Henry Ford in 1908, and the assembly line. If everyone on the line does their job over and over, specialization and division of labor, people working together can produce more in a shorter time. However, those workers are paid less because they have fewer skills. This is vitally important. We see this a lot, especially with all this unionization and all this kind of stuff, these big companies. You're making yourself more specialized, which can be a good thing, but it actually hurts you overall because you don't know how to do as much. Therefore, you cannot market yourself as valuable. Look back just 100 years ago. Most people could take care of every single thing from plumbing to electrical to farming to everything else. Now we outsource all of that. We don't even buy our own groceries anymore. So what you're seeing is kind of a lack of ownership because people don't have the skills they had 100 years ago. Now we may know more than we did 100 years ago. However, we only know it in like a handful of different things. This is really what is kind of plaguing our society today, is that people don't have the skills that they used to have, and therefore we are devalued. We don't have as much value individually as we used to because we're specialized. As you can tell, I feel very passionate about all this specialization and this mess going on, but at the end of the day, you gotta make sure you as an individual are valued at your highest possibility, and that comes with knowledge and knowing how to do things. And stepping off my soapbox, we're going to talk about the inspiring quote for today. Never let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. And that came from the infamous Babe Ruth. Hope you learned something today. Have a good one.